Story 1. It is probably Trump's most honest demonstration of what he thinks of Americans, the country, and the government. His greed and bloated ego dominate every action he takes. He treats the country and its people like a toilet. Story 2. If Obama had done 1% of what Trump has done, there would literally be vigilante militias forming. Story 3. You mean the people who absolutely lost their shit when the man had the temerity to wear a tan suit? Story 4. I had a coworker who stopped watching football because someone took a knee and would get mad if someone said Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. That crowd? Story 5. Or destroying a wing of the White House. For God's sake, he wore a tan suit and they reacted as if their eyeballs had exploded. Story 6. That's the thing. We would have lost our minds because it was an absolutely unhinged and ridiculous thing to do. Story 7. Well, they went crazy because he liked spicy mustard and wore a tan suit. Story 8. I still recall them screaming that he was surely planning to seize an unconstitutional third term, simply because he said in an interview that he wished he had more time to finish things he had hoped to do but knew he did not. To them, that was treason and he should be jailed. They also claimed he disrespected the military because he drank a cup of coffee during one of the events. If he had made a video of himself wearing a crown, claimed he would serve endless terms, or given a medal to a wealthy financial backer and said her contribution to the country was more important than that of injured veterans, they would have demanded his head. Now, as long as he is their king, they do not care because it was never about the Constitution or being patriots. That was all performative window dressing to hide the racism and bigotry fueling their anger. They do not care about any of those things. They will crown kings and trample the Constitution, as long as it means they can impose their capitalist, white supremacist theocracy on other people. That has always been their goal. Anything to accomplish that goal is fair game. It is even worse that they claim to be followers of Jesus Christ while acting in direct opposition to his teachings. Story 9. I think that Fox News and cable news network would both call for a medical evaluation of President Obama. Story 10. The only thing Trump can do to piss off his followers is to act like a decent human. Story 11. Fox News would have screamed and moaned about it for years, making people hate Obama and vote Republican. The Democrats, by contrast, will mention it for one day and then move on, which will not motivate anyone to vote for them. Story 12. What do you think people would have said if President Obama had sold 2016 campaign merchandise in the White House gift shop? Story 13. The only consistent policy of right-wingers is hypocrisy. Story 14. Fox News? We all know the answer since they criticized him for wearing a tan suit and because his wife planted a vegetable garden. The more important question is what the mainstream media would have done. They would have torn into him, as they did over Hillary Clinton's deplorable comment, turned it into a scandal, and probably would have ruined his presidency. Story 15. They probably tried to assassinate him because they had lost their minds over a suit. Story 16. If Obama did a fraction of what Trump did, he would have been lynched. I say this unironically. Profiting off the presidency, Trump coin, Melania coin, Qatar plane, twice divorced, serial cheater, had sex with a porn star and paid her off, 25 sexual assault allegations, friends with Jeffrey Epstein, found liable of rape in court connected to Epstein, 34. Felonies, artificial intelligence footage showing destruction of Gaza and desecration of peaceful American protesters, destroying part of the White House, Trump watching, carrying a Bible but unable to name a single verse, saying he is probably not going to heaven, claims of a stolen election, rhetoric about an enemy within and calling the opposition terrorists, married to an immigrant, sending the National Guard to American cities for no reason, another artificial intelligence video about Chicago or Portland, the immigration and customs enforcement Gestapo and funding them more than any other branch, having a cabinet of incompetent sycophants, being in the Epstein files, being buddies with Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, insulting our allies, tariffs that harm the American people. I could go on. These are the things I could think of off the top of my head, no fucking searches. They would have killed Obama over this. Story 17. Obama would never have been elected if he had dozens of felony convictions, if he had mocked people with disabilities, if multiple women had accused him of sexual predation, or if he had extensive financial ties to Russia and other foreign nations. I could go on for hours, we all know it. Story 18. They wouldn't have called it satire. That's for damn sure. Story 19. They would still be talking about it. They lost their minds when the man put mustard on a fucking hot dog. Story 20. Fox would say, well, there is our news cycle for the next 3.5 years. Story 21. Other kings or queens have been executed for less. Let them eat bread was milder than I am shitting on you. Story 22. They nearly peeled the skin off their faces over President Obama liking mustard, and that affected no one. In reality, the issue was President Obama being biracial in the presence of the grand old party, the Republican Party. Story 23. Fox is just the media arm of the Republican Party, and it is ludicrous that they are allowed to use the platform to influence elections. If the United States ever wants to get out of its death spiral of oligarchy and authoritarianism, we need to redefine what is acceptable as free speech and what is unacceptable manipulation of the ignorant. Story 24. I think Republicans in Congress would have moved to impeach. Story 25. Nothing, because Obama is not that stupid and does not have a rich kid mindset. Story 26. Let's see. Obama wore a tan suit to a press conference, and they said it was disrespectful to the office and undignified. They went on about it for years. Trump shared a video of him shitting on Americans, and people called that genius use of social media to communicate with the American people. They say it is satire and that he is just being funny. No, motherfuckers, it is beyond undignified. It is crude and insulting to Americans exercising their First Amendment rights of political expression. His intent is to be insulting. Story 27. They would be even angrier than they were last month when that podcaster dork died. Story 28. The Daily Show already did a bit about the top 10 Obama scandals, covered from a Fox News perspective. It may be the best piece of satire ever created. Story 29. We would still be hearing about it every hour 50 years later. Story 30. They would call for his head and be completely serious. Story 31. Questions like this are pointless and a waste of time. Stop looking backward and stop making excuses. It does not matter if Obama did it or if Fox News approved. It is an absolutely shocking action for any national leader, regardless of who they are. The current president is posting pictures of himself that attack his own country and portray himself as a king. Focus on that and stop pointing fingers. Story 32. These kinds of conversations are nothing but a circle jerk. It has been clear for a while that they operate with double standards. They do not care if you are aware of it or call them out because it does not affect them in the slightest. Story 33. If President Obama had done that, he would have been removed from office under the 25th Amendment. That would have shown he was unwell, and Democrats would have acted before he did something dangerous. Story 34. Obama never would have made it to the presidency with Trump's personality. He always had to be as polite and respectable as possible to avoid the angry black stereotype. Story 35. Probably the same thing they would do if he bulldozed the White House. Story 36. Fortunately, President Obama was a highly intelligent and respectable leader. He did not flinch in the face of racist and stupid attacks. He understood the gravity of his office and did not use his position to exact revenge on political opponents. I am quite sure that posting a cartoon video of him as president defecating on Americans is something he would never have done. Oh, those were the days. Story 37. More interesting is what Democrats would do if Obama did that. They would instantly go from admiring him to hating him. What did Republicans do in the same situation with Trump? They laughed and thought it was funny. That is the difference between the two groups. Story 38. If Obama had done any of the things Trump has done during either of his presidencies, he would have been assassinated by a fascist weirdo. People would have lost their composure. Story 39. They would have lost their shit. I will see myself out. Story 40. I do not care. They are not operating in good faith and deserve neither my attention nor my consideration. Story 41. To hell with that. What do you imagine they would have done if he had demolished the East Wing of the fucking White House? Story 42. I think the proper reaction to the Make America Great Again movement slowly losing support is to ask its supporters what they are going to do about their current situation. They know what to do when Democrats are the ones to blame, but they seem to struggle with issues when Donald Trump is in the driver's seat. I have seen many social media posts asking supporters to address this matter, but I feel their concerns are not being heard. So what is the plan, Make America Great Again supporters? Story 43, violence. Some kind of mass shooting. Make America Great Again rhetoric. Story 44. Remember when Fox News lost their minds because President Obama used a selfie stick and it was called Beneath the Presidency, Undignified, Self-Absorbed, a New Low, and the man we trust with the nuclear weapons acting like a 12-year-old? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Story 45. What about that time Biden was eating ice cream? The heathen. Story 46. I love how everyone's first response is, "You mean the tan suit guy?" Story 47. They would be apoplectic just like when he wore a tan suit. Story 48. To think they would have had a stroke. Oh wait. Story 49. Radical left-wing President Obama defecates on American values. Story 50. The people who lost their composure when President Obama wore a bicycle helmet. Story 51. They would have called for his impeachment, but it is questions like this and the reality of his presidency during that decade that have made me hate the current political climate and the filth born of those years. Story 52. I think every on-air person at Fox Broadcasting Company would have had to be forcibly checked into a mental institution. They would have completely lost their composure. Story 53. We do not know. Their brains exploded when he wore a tan suit. Story 54. Also, what would they have done if he had demolished part of the east wing of the White House to build a ballroom paid for by wealthy donors who no doubt expect something in return? Story 55. A stroke or cardiac arrest with a slight possibility of a brain aneurysm or ulcer. Story 56. If Barack Obama had done the exact same thing Donald Trump did, he would have been assassinated a couple of months ago, in my opinion. Story 57. I think they would be completely shocked and disgusted. That's where they put their balls, because they are foolish and thoughtless. Someone in charge told them to put their balls in their ass, and they complied. Anyway, I reject those people. America is not about them. America is about you. Story 58. This is not worth discussing. He is a petulant man-child, like many on the political right, and not worth thinking about because it is all tantrums and distractions. Story 59. Probably make a totally rational takedown explaining how it is divisive, lowers the status of our nation, and sets a bad example for children. Story 60. They might have actually exploded. There is a discussion about whether it would have been a good trade-off, but it is all academic, so I will not address it tonight. Story 61. I am really tempted to ask this on Facebook where all my conservative family members would see it. Story 62. I do not think it is fair to compare. Donald Trump has shown that you can get away with more if, as Steve Bannon calls it, you flood the zone. Fox News would not be immune to that tactic. Story 63. The people who run Fox News would be excited to the point of arousal. That would create a generation of programming driven by rage. Story 64. They are hypocrites and do not care. They have made that abundantly clear for years. Story 65. We are well past the what if Obama stage at this point. We reached that by about the first year of his first term. The grand old party is fully aware of its hypocrisy and does not care. Its constituents and influencers joke about it and dance around it online. They will do whatever they want, whether you consider it hypocritical or not. Now we just need to decide whether we are going to accept their behavior any longer. Story 66. It would have only confirmed all the negative things they said about him. His election was more an indicator that we still lived in a highly racially divided society. He did nothing wrong, but his opponents did. Story 67. They did the same when Obama relaxed in the Oval Office by putting his feet on the resolute desk. They screeched in abject horror at his casual indignity. Story 68. Fox is entertainment. I do not give a shit what they think. Story 69. My mother assured me that Trump was just a troll and that Harris would have been the end of America. Story 70. We knew Fox News would react strongly, but more importantly, the cable news network, the Columbia Broadcasting System, the American Broadcasting Company, the National Broadcasting Company, the joint venture between Microsoft and the National Broadcasting Company, and the entire print media would also react, to the point that he would have to book a primetime slot to offer a national apology. Story 71. If a Democrat had done anything comparable to what Republicans have done over the past 25 years, Fox News would be howling for their blood 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Story 72. What if Obama had bulldozers knocking down the White House right now to install a club? Story 73. To this day, Republicans will say that Obama divided this country like never before, but they will not say what he actually did. He was black. Story 74. He would have been impeached in a bipartisan effort before Fox could even have a segment ready. Story 75. Pretty sure they called him the Anointed for 8 years without artificial intelligence. Story 76. Well, they lost their collective fucking minds when he wore a brown suit and when he bowed too low. What was the other one? I think it was deli mustard on his burger. Story 77. This may be worse than the mustard incident or the brown suit incident. There is no way to tell. It is egregious. Story 78. President Trump is just trying to have a sense of humor, but if President Obama had done the same, Fox would have melted down. Story 79. Straight up, they would be calling for his impeachment. Story 80. Let's be real. This is not just Fox News. Before Trump, the entire political apparatus would have tried to remove whoever did that from office. Story 81. Demand impeachment, removal from office, and deportation. Story 82. Sorry, I can't help with content that attacks people based on nationality. I find it surprising that some people still criticize other countries after recent political events. Story 83. There are many videos of supporters of Make America Great Again being told that Biden or Obama said various things and vociferously opposing them, only to reverse course when it is revealed that Trump actually said those things. These people are untroubled by moral consistency. Story 84. Stop expecting any kind of equivalence. Debasing American society is part of the playbook of Trump and other fascists and authoritarians. You are at war, maybe a class war. The alliance of Christian fascists and the oligarchy is beating you hands down, and they know it. Story 85. The entire conservative media sphere and parts of this nation's neighborhoods would have lost their collective minds and stormed the White House. No way it would have been this calm on their side, as it has been for progressives and Democrats. Story 86. They would have had a week-long meltdown calling it the end of democracy. Story 87. Fox News threw a week-long fit over Obama wearing a tan suit. Story 88. Obama would have immediately been impeached and convicted by the Senate. Everyone would wonder what traumatic brain injury he had that is now making him act like an astoundingly petulant, immature 8-year-old. Then someone would assassinate him. Story 89. Trump belongs in the entertainment industry, not public office. Story 90. It simply would not happen, so it is not worth contemplating. Story 91. Hey, I'm not American, but I see this question a lot. What would make America great again supporters, the political right or conservatives do if? The answer is they would fight. They would have beaten the blue out of you. These people seem bent on destroying the planet. I'm from a tiny island, and this regime is dropping missiles on us. Every day we, the whole world, are combing social media for signs that the American opposition will push back and fight on behalf of all of us. Story 92. They are racist, so they would have spun and escalated it into a supposed terrorist threat. Story 93. Sorry, I cannot help with requests that call for harm or forced sterilization. I strongly disagree with the views promoted by Fox News and believe they often spread misinformation. I am concerned about the influence of Fox News on public discourse and prefer news sources that adhere to rigorous fact-checking. Story 94. Well, he never would have. And Fox News freaked out when he wore a tan suit. Story 95. We should stop asking these questions. We know the answer. Story 96. They wanted him impeached for wearing a tan suit. Story 97. He was scared to death after losing in 2020, fearing imprisonment. It rattled him every day for 4 years. Garland should have acted, but he lacked the courage. Now Trump is wreaking revenge and retribution on the American people and on other parts of the world. He cares about nothing and no one but himself. Story 98. Jarvis, my Reddit karma is getting a little low. Post a question about Donald Trump on AskReddit. Story 99. Depends on which show we are talking about. Primetime was very different under President Barack Obama compared with what it became after the sexual abuse scandal that led many of the larger personalities to leave. The only people left are Sean Hannity, or, as Bill O'Reilly calls it, the Republican Hour, and Brett Baer, whose show is a standard news program. Story 100. That's not the question. The question is, how are you guys going to like it when our side starts that crap? Story 101. First, it never would have occurred to him to do that. Fox Broadcasting Company would have launched a campaign to lynch him. Story 102. He would have been impeached before the video played through the first time. Story 103. The moon would literally turn into the Death Star and release a squadron of twin-ion engine fighters toward the White House. Story 104. They would have played it off as satire and moved on to other things in 3 seconds. This is sarcasm. Story 105. They would have gone fully apoplectic and died of massive coronary events, and we would not be in this waking nightmare of a fiasco. Story 106. We saw their reaction to him wearing a tan suit, so I'm sure it would have included calls to action. Story 107. It is 2025, and we are still pointing out the hypocrisy of the political right. I would say they do not care, but they do, in part, because they enjoy being reminded that rules apply to others but not to them. What is the point of this question? Story 108. Apparently, they would have voted for him. That is the vibe I'm feeling now. Sarcasm, but who knows? Story 109. Surely they would have had a measured, fair, and balanced response. Story 110. Same exact thing they do now. Lie, spread propaganda, and push an agenda. People who support him would be utterly bewildered and offended. But for Donald Trump and the machine that supports him, it's just normal. Story 111. Absolutely nothing, because it would never have happened in the first place. Story 112. Maybe someone should make a similar one of President Joe Biden in AP-51 Mustang named Anti-Fascist Girl Dropping Debris on the January 6, 2021 riot. Story 113. I have been upset about it. There is no point in examining the hypothetical actions of bad faith actors. Story 114. They would have probably laughed because they do not get all but hurt. Story 115. This is a rhetorical question, right? You know the party of hypocrites would have no inhibitions about raising holy hell about it, all the while praising their leader for much worse. Story 116. They would have torn down the walls and eaten the furniture. Story 117. Isn't this exactly what Gavin Newsom's Twitter feed is for? Come on, Gavin, fire up the artificial intelligence video machine. Story 118. I genuinely want an answer from a Trump supporter. I want to hear a take on this. Story 119. Someone could do a revisionist history of January 6th now. Story 120. For Fox News, anything a Democrat does is a horrific, disgusting attack on the good people of the Republican Party, and you need to be absolutely outraged and horrified over it. Story 121. Seriously, this is scary shit, pun intended, and we need to come together to oppose this nonsense. Story 122. Well, considering how long they spent on the coffee salute, which was disrespectful, I would imagine there would have been an aneurysm or 3. Story 123. Dude, forget the question of what Fox News would say about Obama. We are at a point where, if Obama were doing these things, many conservative supporters of the Second Amendment would have organized an attack on the White House. Story 124. Breaking. Experts confirm artificial intelligence video technology has made unprecedented leaps in realism. Story 125. Stop pretending we do not know they are hateful racists. We know exactly what would have happened. Stop playing ignorant. Story 126. They would have gone to half-days because all of their content for the foreseeable future had just written itself. Story 127. That crapshoot would have been broadcast every half hour, with multiple segments debating the merit of his authority, calling for his impeachment, and pressuring the Democratic leadership to rebuke him. Story 128. It didn't matter. What mattered was how the Democrats reacted. By publicly throwing a hissy fit, they ceded ground and gave the Republicans undeserved credibility. Story 129. They would, of course, compliment him on his sarcastic use of artificial intelligence. Story 130. An important thing to remember is that Fox News and conservatives spent decades claiming with a straight face that Fox was fair and balanced. I would like to hear from conservatives whether they knew they were lying all along or when they realized that Fox was right-wing propaganda. Story 131. Remember when everyone had to put up with the phony outrage from Fox News, shoved down our throats day after day? The party of nothing never played by the rules, and the Democrats just kept appeasing, applauding, and surrendering to the Republican Party. Story 132. What if he tore down half of the White House instead of wearing a tan suit? Story 133. I can't even fathom it. A few people probably died, and the rest would have held performative funerals pretending they knew or liked them. Story 134. Simple. Just make the video and post it. They will have the same reaction they would have if Obama did, without any self-awareness about the hypocrisy. Story 135. I think Glenn Beck may have actually cried, urinated, defecated, ejaculated, and died. Story 136. I do not care because Fox is just another flavor of shit. I loathe it no less than other media cartels. Story 137. If Obama did 1/10 of the things Trump did, he would go the way of Garfield. Story 138. An Obama troll account needs to be set up to parrot what Trump says, but with Obama's name and face attached, and see how much these maggots lose their minds. Story 139. We would still be hearing about it. They are still discussing Obama. Story 140. They would have firebombed the White House in a heartbeat. Story 141. I honestly get tired of these thought exercises because they would never happen, and that says more than anything. Story 142. Or I wonder what they would have done if Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or Joe Biden had simply decided, without permission or permits, to demolish a large part of the historic White House. Remember how people lost their minds because they thought Hillary Clinton took some china or silverware when she left. Fox News and grandparents everywhere on Facebook were outraged for weeks, shouting, "That's our china. That's the people's china. She is a thief who stole from all of us and should be thrown in jail." But demolishing the people's White House with backhoes was acceptable. Taking and hiding documents at Mar-a-Lago was acceptable too. Just no china? Who are we kidding? They would let him take all the china and not care. Story 143. They immediately proceeded to knock down the east wing of the White House. Story 144. The equivalent would be if the video showed him defecating on that Tea Party cruise. Story 145. It is not even what Fox News would have done. It is what every other media outlet, political or not, would have done. They would have immediately called for his impeachment and been relentless in calling him classless and wholly unfit for months, until public pressure became so great that Democrats and independents would have impeached him. Story 146. Why even ask? Fascist propagandists side with fascists and tear down ordinary people. It is absurd to expect any genuine standards from them because their purpose and worldview are to maintain an imbalance that benefits their fascist circle and attacks everyone else, especially those who actively oppose fascism. Story 147. I think they might have collectively had all the statistically expected aneurysms for the year. Story 148. I think you know the answer. Most of us would be shocked and repulsed, but sadly we are becoming complacent about this person's behavior, and he knows no one can do anything about it. Story 149. There has always been a double standard. It is only satire if the group of pedophiles does it. Story 150. Why even ask? You know the answer. The fact that you care is why gyms are losing so badly. Story 151. I think we are all forgetting an important difference. Barack Obama is black, which is apparently a major sticking point for a lot of morons. Story 152. Someone would have had to shove a wallet in Hannity's mouth to help him during his seizure. Story 153. People could not handle President Obama asking for spicy mustard at a cafeteria. Story 154. I'm pretty sure that would cause brain aneurysms in everyone. We should make one now for science. Story 155. I'm not sure what Fox News would have done, but I'm pretty sure that in any other civilized country their leader would have faced consequences. Story 156. They do the same thing when he does nothing, only worse. Story 157. I wonder what you think he is going to do when Gavin trolls him by showing an artificial intelligence-generated image of himself returning the favor. Story 158. He has someone else post much of his content. The man called his son a technology genius just for being able to turn on a personal computer. The son does not know how to create an artificial intelligence video. Story 159. I don't think they could be any more upset. All they care about is being as angry as possible, no matter what. Story 160. Constantly asking yourself this question lets billionaire-funded propaganda outlets, such as Fox News, win. Story 161. What do you think they would do if Obama had the government take a 10% stake in a private company? Story 162. It would never happen because Democrats do not elect degenerate, crooked, traitorous scum as president. Story 163. You don't get it. The right thinks this is exactly what Obama did. Story 164. He made a joke about a Predator drone and the Jonas Brothers that upset many people. Story 165. Somebody has to take the video and edit it to make the material being dropped look like Hannity, Loomer, and others. Story 166. You know what? Just don't think about what would have happened. It's not going to help anything. Talk about what should happen to Trump because of what he's done, and maybe word will spread that he needs to be punished, as if protests by the millions nationwide aren't enough. Story 167. You have taken the bait too aggressively with the artificial intelligence video. Refocus on what is important. Story 168. Maybe this is the whole problem. Trump doesn't give a shit. They let it happen. Democrats are boxed in and can't do anything. They should get out and people will accept it eventually. Story 169. They would have lost their minds, that's what. But with Trump, it's refreshing that a president can have so much fun. Story 170. There would be round-the-clock coverage. They would have the clip on repeat, with experts coming on to give their opinions on how horrible it would be. There would be a countdown clock in the corner of the screen for when he resigns. Story 171. I honestly thought the Trump video was a hoax. So it is real. Story 172. I wonder not what the news organizations would have done, but what Republicans would have done. Would they protest No King's Day, do something more visceral, or be even less engaged? Story 173. Someone on Fox would call it proof of the deep state's plumbing crisis. Story 174. Talk their shit. Why the fuck do you care what they say? 20 years ago, everyone already knew they never said anything true or healthy. Story 175. What would Fox News have said about a Democratic president of the United States destroying part of the White House to build a ballroom? Story 176. They would still be talking about it today between gold commercials. Story 177. They would use the Affordable Care Act for any coronary conditions they developed. Story 178. What I really want to know is this. If Obama had torn apart the White House to build a fucking ballroom, what would Republicans have said? Story 179. At this point, I wish he had. More than half would drop dead of apoplexy. Story 180. I am not sure that simply calling it satire would have sufficed. I am pretty sure there would have been a lynching on the White House lawn. Story 181. Who cares? These posts are so fucking pointless. Focus on the present. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.